to another episode of the PokerNews podcast. This week is popping off. We don't even let any COVID or any of whatever else is going on in 2021 get us down because there is so much to talk about this week. And we have the lovely Miss Lynn Gilmartin coming on the show to talk about all things WPT, plus making a baby, getting married, all the personal details also of Lynn's life down under, working in films. I'm your girl, Sarah Herring. We've got Jeff Platt. He's exposed a little bit more of the room for you guys.
Very strange. Weird Zoom decision.
Yeah. I feel like between the three of us, this is like very indicative of our personalities. Jeff's is like very clean and straight edge, but poker related. Chad's is like just eclectic and like totally, I don't know, bananas. And mine is like a 12-year-old girl's room. For those who are listening and can't see, by the way, that's what's going on. Chad Holloway, you missed us last week. I know it was probably hard. You were journaling about it all weekend, but you went to the City of Sin to play some pokers. And did you return richer, poorer? What happened?
Well, it was an interesting experience. I went out to play the WPT Venetian, which we're going to talk about on this episode. And it was fun. It was a great experience to get to play that tournament. It was probably the toughest tournament I've ever played, to be honest. And I've played, the WSOP main event on a few occasions. I played the 25K PSPC, but this one, man, was just full of ringers. After, every time I moved a table, it was just chock full of these guys who are far and away better than me. Now, I made it through day one, which I was very happy about. I showed that I could hang with them. And not only that, I started off really bad. I lost like half my stack within the first 2 hours. And I thought this is going to be pretty shitty to have come all the way here and bust right away. But I buckled down and, managed to chip up and bag an above average stack. I think there was about 210 of us or so who made it to day two out of 936, I believe it was. So yeah, it was nice to make day two, but unfortunately on day two, just one of those situations where didn't catch any cards, slowly dwindled, looking for a spot, never really found it. Eventually got it in my last 12 bigs or something in a coin flip and did not win the coin flip. I ended up busting, I think 11 spots shy of the money. So that one, yeah, it kind of stung. It would have been nice to cash that tournament. But like I said, it was a good experience overall. It really showed me the areas where I need to work on my game if I hope to play in similar fields moving forward. And look, I got to play with some really accomplished players, which was a lot of fun for me. I even busted Dylan Wilkerson, who is a WPT champ in his own right. So I've certainly got some highlights from the experience. And whilst I didn't win at poker, though, it's Vegas, baby. I did win a little bit playing some blackjack. And I'm not a slots guy. I put $20 in the slots at Venetian. I turned that into 180 in like 3 spins. I cashed out. And then I went to downtown Grand where I was staying. I highly recommend it. I'm like, let me feed in 100 just to build up some credits. Maybe they'll, give me some room offers or something. And I was betting $1.60 a spin. And on the third spin, I hit $800. And so I turned my $20 into like 900. And it was a nice little consolation prize from the trip. I cashed out. That was it.
Well, you're going to be a slots guy now, I think. Dude, after all that.
That's poker, like
really.
Poker, right?
I bragged about it a little bit to Alan Kessler, who is a renowned slots player, and he claims he can teach me. He can teach me how to make $100,000 a year playing slots.
Oh boy!
And you know what? I think most people are crazy, but I actually think Kessler does have a system that works.
Dude, I believe him 1,000%. Because like, how is he making money? Not playing poker, right?
Well, the min cashes that up, Sarah. Come on. Let's show Mr. Kessler some respect. So, Chad, you mentioned it was a great experience. Did it feel different? Did it feel like you were playing a prestigious tournament? Did it feel like you were a part of the World Poker Tour main event?
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of giving it that atmosphere. There was good branding. The WPT team was on site. Matt Savage was there. We're going to talk about him a little bit because there was some controversy.
He was?
Yeah. It had a good feel. It was a little different playing in COVID times. You have the plexiglass. You have to wear a mask. Lots of procedures in place. I thought they did a great job in that regard, keeping people safe. I certainly felt safe. It was kind of hard to communicate with players sometimes, trying to have a conversation with the mask in the way, with the plexiglass in the way. So that little aspect wasn't so much fun, but we made do. We adjusted like everybody has to do during the pandemic.
It might have been really disappointing for you to make the final 8, Chad, because as we know, the final 8 turned into 2 final 4s. And I don't know, I know that you know almost everyone that was there covering this tournament. For those who don't know, Jared Jaffee very publicly outed the situation at the WPT as they reached the quote unquote final table. I think their actual final tables are normally 6, right? So they have instituted various different policies in order to have a most effective final table. But he definitely called out Tommy De La Rosa from Venetian, Matt Savage from WPT, and basically, I thought I could see some valid points. I'm very interested to hear your guys' thoughts, and Chad, especially having played the event. What, obviously, up until the point that you busted, things seemed to be moving smoothly. How would you have felt if 8-handed they moved to 2 4-handed tables?
Let me break it down a little bit more. This tournament was played 8-handed throughout, and by rules for 8-handed tournaments, usually you combine at the final 9, right, to play then to the official final table of 8. But because of COVID protocols, they were unable to do that. Their tables can only hold 8 players. So instead of going to 9 players, which they couldn't do, they decided to institute the kind of 6-handed rules that are in the TDA, which says a official final table will be 7. Right, you come together at 7. So with 8 players left, you play 4 and 4 to keep it balanced. Is how the thinking goes on this. And this was in the structure sheet, or the posted rules, if you will. It was a little nebulous. There was kind of some confusion about it. It wasn't super clear, and that's why it kind of came as a surprise to Jared Jaffee and some of the other players that were still in the tournament at that point. And it doesn't sound like they were too happy about it. They complained to the tournament staff, who in turn got in touch with Matt Savage, who is the WPT tournament director. But like you said, Tommy is the Venetian tournament director, and they basically said, look, these are posted, and these are the rules, and that's what it's going to be. And Matt Savage wasn't on site, according to Jared Jaffee. Neither was Tommy. So, he took issue with that there was no big decision maker on site when there was a big complaint happening. But ultimately, they did play 4 and 4, and Jared Jaffee did end up busting in 8th place. He wasn't the short stack at the time, so he wasn't necessarily just complaining about this because he was the short stack. He was in the middle of the pack, and there were certainly other players who felt the same way as he did. Now, it's tricky. My feelings on it, I've given it thought, because I wasn't really aware of it, and I'm like, well, what if I would have made it to that point? And I think that they should have just made it to 8-handed table, right? That's what I think should have happened, but it wasn't posted in the rules. So I don't think they should have necessarily changed the rules when they were already posted, but I think it's something that needs to be changed and addressed for future events, if that makes sense.
But also, and Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, in the rules, it doesn't, in the structure sheet specifically, it doesn't specifically say, it does say we will redraw at 7, but it doesn't say, when we're down to 8, we are going to play 2 4-handed tables. One of the rules states play will begin 8-handed, play will move to 6-handed for the official WPT final table. Now, I understand that's always been the plan for the World Poker Tour in this last year or so, since everything has shifted to 8-handed. And so I completely respect that rule. If they want to go 2 4-handed tables, I personally disagree with it, but whatever. That's certainly their call to make. That's Matt's call to make. But when it's not specifically in the structure sheet, I think the waters are a little murkier as it comes to this rule. I just think another statement is needed, and I'm sure it'll be added after this. When we get down to 8, we will play 2 4-handed tables, versus it just kind of being a little bit questionable that we're going to redraw at 7. By the way, this tournament is 8-handed until we get down to our final table of 6. There's nothing that says when we get down to 8, we're playing 2 4-handed tables.
Yeah, it was implied by saying the redraw would be at 7 players, but like you said, that doesn't really explain the situation. That people still have to infer that, which a lot of people obviously didn't. So I certainly understand the confusion. I understand the displeasure and anger from Jared Jaffee and some others, but I also do understand, Tommy La Rosa and Matt Savage's point of this is in the rules. This is what the TDA says. This is what we have tried to share, and this is what we're going to stick to. So, in this particular instance, had I made it to that point, I would have been like, well, I wish we were just combining at 8, but rules are rules. Let's play it out. And, from a player's perspective, I do hope they at least reevaluate and think maybe should we just combine at 8 at that point. But then you've got to think too that at that point, then you're playing at 9-handed, you're playing 4 somewhere and 5 at the other, right? And it's a big blind ante format.
Yeah, you don't.
So one table, like you have to find a way to balance that so it's fair as well, because that 4-handed table, those players are going to get hit with the blinds quicker than that 5-handed table. And so that's the reasoning of trying to go like 4 and 4 to kind of keep that balance in place so it is fair. So it's a juggling act that I certainly don't envy.
I don't understand. Just in case I'm missing something big here. At 9, what are they doing?
They would play 4-handed at one table and 5-handed at another.
So it's already imbalanced at 9. Nothing about this 4 and 4 fixes that problem at all, right?
Right. But if we're saying that the official final table is 8, right? So then the bubble is with 9 players. You're playing the bubble at an imbalance. Whereas if the final table is 7,
but table 6. I was under the impression the WPT final tables were always 6.
The televised final tables are always 6. The official final tables are 7. Like at the World Series of Poker, the official final table is always 9, but I think in some instances, at least in the past, they would combine at 10, right? Yeah. Like the November 9, when we had the November 9, the final 10 would combine to the last table, but the official final table wasn't set until only 9 players remained.
And most WPT main events are 8-handed, and they do combine to one table of 9 at the, quote unquote final table bubble or whatever it may be. But due to current COVID protocols in Nevada, you cannot have a table with 9 players.
Which is also just like, because
I mean, you're pretty close to players anyway. But come on, Sarah, just we want to stick with 8-handed. We don't want to go to 9 or 10.
I mean, I think that's hysterical, but I think as people who are really reasonable and logical, at least for me, that's something that I really value about the poker community as a whole, is that we're not a community that's just like, well, these are the rules, so that's why we do things. I understand that, and I guess if that's how it's written, and they say, okay, this is what we have to do for this tournament because these are the rules, and everyone agreed to it beforehand. Okay, fine. But in my useless personal opinion, which holds very little value, I would say this is probably something we should look at and say, like, in a logical world, this doesn't make sense, and also feels pretty unfair in a spot where there's a lot of money on the line. And I'm always having to remind myself, for people who are professional poker players, for people whom this is their livelihood, every dollar, every situation, every big blind, counts and matters. And so, I think it's worth looking at for the time. If we're going to have these protocols for a little bit, we should probably check it out. And I think I respect Matt Savage a lot. I think he's a very intelligent person who's very capable of instituting changes that are necessary. So I think Jared Jaffee's approach is probably not always going to be the one that's going to bring the best change. But that's his personality also. And, but I hope that this has brought up a discourse and a dialogue that people will look at. There was a ton of, Chad, you mentioned a ton of just sickos in the field. Of course, I'm just excited to see all these poker players back out and about. And of course, also, maybe Jeff will take this one. You want to talk about the heads up battle? I try not to put too many personal...
Well, I think, but before you get to the battle, talk about what happened right before the final table. That kind of even overshadowed the Jared Jaffee complaints a little bit.
The first time I was aware of this yesterday was a tweet from Fedor Holz, and he mentioned Roland Rokita, who's at the WPT final table. He was second with 6 left going into the day. And Fedor said Roland just got to the hospital for a severe emergency operation. Do you know who's in charge for the tournament? Can someone help? It's supposed to start in 2 hours. And everybody, I'm not sure how much of a response they got. I'm not sure if the other 5 players wanted to go ahead. I got the sense from Joe Mckeehen on Twitter that Joe just wanted to wait until they were able to have a full six-handed final table. Roland did end up making it. They delayed the start of the final table by about an hour or so. And then Chad, it seemed like he just kind of showed up and they were just good to go, right?
Yeah, there certainly seems to be some confusion as to exactly what was going on. Maybe that Fedor tweet was a little presented in a more serious manner than what actually happened. I don't know. We don't know what the severe emergency operation was, but we do know that Roland ended up showing up and playing. So it's very curious, and it did open up the doors of what will we do. And in my thinking, and I've investigated this before with what I just mentioned on November 9, I once asked the WSOP what would happen if somebody died in between, making the November 9 and when it actually plays out. And it was, they would simply get blinded out. And we've seen it in many tournaments. People can't show up for whatever reason. Their stack just gets blinded out. If they're in the money, they get whatever place they're at when those chips run out. Now, this is a high profile final table. There's a lot of money on the line. So it was a little more, I guess, serious than that. But I do think the precedent is there to say, well, if you can't come to play, it just gets blinded out. It happened to Stu Unger in the World Series of Poker main event one year. He had so many chips after day one, couldn't make day two, ended up getting I don't remember, 17th place or something like that. Anyways, there's precedent for it. So I could see them just saying, you know what, we're going to get blinded out. Now, on the flip side, if all the other players, if the other 5 players agreed, like you said, Joe Mckeehen said he might be willing to just postpone, then by all means, I think tournament officials should try to make that accommodation if all players are in agreement and are willing to wait. Of course, there's logistics involved with that. This is assuming if it's a serious operation, maybe they have to wait weeks. Maybe some of these guys have to, Ku Vang lives in Minnesota. He's got a family. He probably is going to have to fly home, maybe fly back. Is the Venetian going to put him up for that? How's it all? There would be a lot of logistics that I'm sure they are very glad they didn't have to deal with.
The tournament staff, the media, there's so many moving parts in a big tournament like this. I just kind of feel like, even though that's probably the right thing to do, that there is just no realistic way to make that the standard for.
And I think if you're going to do something, and I agree with you there, Sarah, especially if it was a TV production, which this one wasn't. A TV production makes it all the more difficult to do any sort of postpone. Right. And it's from a player's perspective here. If they were going to put it to a player vote, I would like to see it be like a anonymous vote, right? Everybody gets a red black card, slide it in the middle for your vote, right? So nobody knows who's voting for what. And I say this because there is a lot of money on the line. There is a lot of equity, and it maybe from a player it's a nice thing to do, but you're not obligated to do it. If you think that Roland Rokita is a much better player, which by all accounts he is one of the best up and coming players in the world right now, maybe I don't want to deal with him. Let me vote no. Let's play it out by the rules. Let him get blinded out. Now, like I said, I wouldn't want to put that out there in a public manner, but if I was at the final table and it was an anonymous vote, I mean, I'll be bold enough to say it here on the podcast. I'd probably be like, you know what? There's my let's play this out card.
Yeah, I definitely think there's, especially in this industry, we've also seen our fair share of angle shooting, and there's a lot of, edges and a lot of money on the line and a lot of this, that, to me, even opening up the door for allowing that kind of stuff, I think could also open up the door for a lot of more nefarious possibilities for people to make some weird, crazy kind of decisions. And we've definitely already dealt with this a lot of times. Remember there was the time where the guy was sick during the World Series, or he had a heart attack or something, and they were like, can we let his wife play? And everyone was gonna vote, could his wife play for him? And the staff was like, no, because I just feel like it's bleeding heart syndrome. I definitely think it all makes sense, but in the real world, it's if you miss shit, dude, you just miss it sometimes.
Yeah, and I do think it should be a case-by-case situation, so it depends on the circumstances. Like we said, the only thing we had to go on this tweet was that he had to, quote, he got to the hospital with a severe emergency operation. Now, for me, if I was another player at the table, I'd be curious to know, what is this? What's the details behind it? Was he just, walking and had some sort of collapse that was an undiagnosed medical condition or something like that, I'd have a lot more understanding and sympathy for than the flip side of, oh no, he just went out and got hammered the night before, maybe has alcohol poisoning or something like that. I don't think either are the case in this particular spot, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the polarization of a situation like this and how it should be taken into consideration.
And as far as the actual tournament is concerned, Roland eliminated in third. This was a storyline at the final table that we've seen before. It's Joe Mckeehen with an absolutely massive chip stack running the show at the final table. Trace Henderson out in sixth, Ku Vang eliminated in fifth. Jack Hardcastle, who has had an incredible last year or two, eliminated in fourth for a little bit more than $270,000. And after Roland's elimination in third, it set up this heads-up battle between Joe Mckeehen, former World Series of Poker main event champion Qing Liu. Joe Mckeehen had a pretty sizable chip lead, about a 2-1 chip lead, and just long story short, just could not win a pot off Liu. I think he lost 18 out of 23 hands that they played heads up. Liu was able to earn the victory, to earn more than $750,000. Quite the effort by Mckeehen, making almost $500,000. So it's going to be a pretty fun week for Liu, I would say, because not only did he win this World Poker Tour event at the Venetian yesterday, but today we're taking this on a Wednesday. He gets to sit down to play the final table of the WPT Gardens Poker Championship at the Poker Go Studio, one of those events that's been delayed for so long. They're finally getting that final table going, and Lou's going to get to play again. So like back-to-back WPT final tables and back-to-back days, just living the dream.
Yeah, it'd be quite history making to capture 2 WPT titles in 2 days.
That's going to be a tough one to top.
Yeah, it's exciting. We'll be having a recap on that on PokerNews. I'll be definitely paying attention to see how Qing Liu does here in that second final table.
And we've got Chance Kornuth on Friday. We're going to have a chat with him. So regardless of how that all plays out, we will get the inner details from the mind of one of the best smiles in poker. Now let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsors before we get too deep into the rest of the stories from this week.
Are your chips dirty and unsanitary? Elite GGCares ultrasonic cleaners kill bacteria and pathogens without using chemicals. Protect your team from potentially hazardous chemicals, UV, and gases. For daily sanitizing of your chips, our laboratory oven will eradicate most viruses using only heat. Up to 2,500 chips sanitized in just 3 minutes. Avoid the reoccurring expense of costly chemicals, UV bulbs, and gases. Safe, inexpensive, and sustainable. Visit EliteChipCare.com.
Well, we briefly mentioned our boy Fedor Holz, and he has been all in the news. He was, as you guys will remember, our guest on last week's podcast. Well, one of our guests, as he prepared for this heads-up match against Limitless, which he was very calm about and very chill, mostly just was, saying that he was interested in entertaining the people and that either way he would learn something and it would be a good outcome for him. And I think it's been a better outcome for him than maybe he had even expected. And I know he felt like entertainment wise, maybe it was too slow playing one table. They decided to ramp it up, kick it up. Jeff, I know you basically work with GGpoker directly, or like are one of the bosses at GGpoker.
Yep, exactly right.
What's been going on?
Well, yeah, you said it, Sarah. So day one, they felt like the action was a little slow. They played 459 hands over the course of about 5 hours. Fedor won almost $40,000. He is the underdog going into this one, Limitless being the favorite. So they did ramp it up. They are playing 2 tables. Day 2, again, went Fedor's way. He won about $15,000. So the underdog stepping up once again. They are playing at the time of taping this podcast. So stay tuned to PokerNews for the recap of episode number 3. They're playing 100, 200. Their stacks are 100 big blinds deep. We got Joey Ingram on the call. All the episodes are on GGpoker.tv. And I think the interesting element of this is that they are both on webcam and they are both able to talk to each other. Now, in the limited amount of time that I've watched, I haven't seen them say too much back and forth. I also know that they're, at least Limitless is playing other tables. I mean, during the other session, he was playing a 100K tournament. So, I mean, you can't blame him for not being entirely focused on this face-off challenge. But it's cool. It's unique. It's fun to watch. It looks cool. And, it's Limitless versus Fedor, two of the most iconic names in the game.
But is he drunk?
I haven't seen the cocktails make an appearance in Limitless's camera. I hope so. I mean, in the pregame shows that they've done, like they set this shoot up at Limitless's place, and he had a glass of scotch or something right next to him, and he was smoking a cigar. It was incredible. He's this perfect Ivan Drago type villain, and I think it's great. I think he's a blast to watch.
Yeah. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure, he wasn't disappointing at least a little, like throw out a little of the anti-hero.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to throw a shout out at some point to our sponsors, our other sponsors who are GGpoker. Before we get into that, they recently just wrapped up a huge SuperMillions main event, and it was Ben Ward who took that one down. Something tells me Chad doesn't know anything about anything this week, right? Like our normal article.
He played a 5K, and Sarah, we got a text from Chad before the 5K started that said he was warming up with this 1100 at the Venetian. I mean, the 1100 was a warm up. How rich?
Really?
That was a heartbreaker of a tournament. I got my opponent to put his chips in so bad on a flush draw with one card to come, and of course he hit it. Had we won that one, we definitely make the money. But alas, that is poker. So this one, I do know a little bit about this one, Sarah. It was a great week on GGpoker, the SuperMillions week, and the main event was a $10,300 buy-in. They had a $10 million guarantee, and it fell short just by 24 entries. And they needed 1,000 players. It got 976. So just a little bit of an overlay there. And, it's hard not to take notice. Like I said, Ben Ward took this one down, and he did so for $1.2 million. And finishing runner-up for $1 million out of Greece was Alexandros Kolonias, who I believe is the World Series of Poker Europe main event champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we appreciate all the action GGpoker has been giving us lately. We love to see them in the game. And I noticed this isn't in our outline, but I also did notice when I was stalking Twitter the last few days that we have an update on the ever-going Vanessa Kade versus GGpoker saga.
Great.
She messaged that her affiliate account, which was started ages ago, is now being closed, which makes a certain amount of sense. If you read what GGpoker wrote, they were basically like, so you're pretty adversarial towards us, doesn't really seem like you want to be an affiliate with us anymore. And Vanessa, responded like, basically GFY, I don't care about this deal anyways, and like your guys' response sucks. So just in case you guys were wondering what's been going on, that's what's been going down in the world of the Vanessa Kade, Dan Bilzerian GGpoker battle. We'll see if it can continue. But for those of us who are loving all the juicy entertainment that GG's been throwing out there, and also for those of us who love a solid overlay, I'm so impressed by that guarantee. Like putting a $10,300 tournament online is a huge risk and a huge gamble anyways. So I'm super impressed by them. And let's go ahead and just get a word from our boy, Kevin Martin, about one of the other coolest programs GGpoker has been running, which is GGCares.
Kevin Martin from GGpoker here, and I just gotta ask, have you heard about GGCare? Oh, you haven't? Well, guess what? It's the new daily promotion that rewards you for experiencing all the bad luck poker has to offer. The bad beats, the coolers, the suckouts, they're so frustrating. We hate them so much, but they cannot be avoided. But now, if you experience a bad beat on GGpoker, GGCare has your back. You'll automatically be registered to play in the next daily $30,000 GGCare flip out tournament. Here's the best part. You don't even have to be online for these flip out tournaments. Yes, you still have a chance for cash to go right into your balance. So remember, next time you're on GGpoker and you take a bad beat, GGCare has your back. So if you have not joined the fastest online growing website, then make sure you join the GGpoker community and join me at the tables very soon.
Well, as Chad mentioned, it was a big week on GGpoker, including a big old 635K score from our boy Ludovic Geilich. I want to say, is Ludo no longer a party poker?
Correct.
Pro? He's like moved on. Is he a GG guy now? Or are we like massaging
I don't
that
believe
maybe?
he's a GG guy. I mean, still plays under that gravy boat screen name on GG. He won the 25K. That would be event number 30, the super high roller for a super payout of $635,000. Did chop it up with Bert Stevens, Giraffe Ganger. So just pure sickos in this field. Daniel DeVoris, Sammy Calapuro, David Coleman, David Yan, also able to final table this event. That's just a massive score. It's awesome. Just one more note on Vanessa, and I like Vanessa, and I know that we've gone back and forth, plenty of times. We met before. We get along very well. I do like it. We have our disagreements on this issue, which I absolutely will not get into, but I do love how she did sign off her note with Vanessa Kade, with the HOE spelling that Bulzarian did use. So much respect to Vanessa for signing off with that. That I thought was funny, was entertaining, was enjoyable.
Yeah, she should probably change her Twitter and everything. Like, we should just really run.
Yeah, just really go for it. Yeah.
AKA also. Well, if you are looking for a hoe in the poker world, I have to tell you, you are not going to find it in our next guest. Unfortunately, I think many hearts would be very excited, but on our guest this week, as we move on to the World Poker Tour final tables, as we finally play out some of these final tables and even some new ones in the coming week, I thought it would be great to catch up with one of the absolutely most stunning faces in poker, who's also just one of the most wonderful, wonderful people, who used to be, back in the day, a part of Team PokerNews. Welcome to the show, the one and only, one of my very best friends, Lynn Gilmartin. I am with one of my favorite people in the entire world, one of my best friends. You guys will know her as the anchor for the World Poker Tour and also a former PokerNews girl.
Yeah.
Lynn Gilmartin, all the way from down under. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be sitting here across from you virtually.
I'm like, honestly, there have been so many times where I'm like, I wonder if I should just do an interview with Lynn. And then I'm like, am I just using my connections with Lynn to like get all the good interviews? It's like, I have to wait like once a year, maybe. Like I can't use it too much. But okay, first of all, I just want to start off with, because I was realizing as one of my closest friends, I don't even know where you live anymore. Like, are you still in Melbourne?
No, actually. And it's funny, we don't even know where we live anymore either. That's kind of actually how we've been for 10 years. That's always the hardest question for me to ever answer. People, when you meet like a new person and they ask, oh, like, where do you live? Well, there's always a story to it. So Melbourne's always heart home. That's where I grew up. But then I've been living in LA for 8 years and also a bit of Mexico City. And then the pandemic has now brought us back to Australia. So we've been in Australia since June last year. But we're on the Gold Coast, which is an amazing part of the country. And that's been a really cool perk, I guess, about the pandemic, in terms of like us, just like, because everything's online and virtual, we were able to just look at the map of Australia and go, okay, where do we want to park ourselves for a while? And we chose the Gold Coast because just down the road is the Star Gold Coast. It's the casino that the World Poker Tour has events at. It's our partner, and it's a beautiful casino. So we thought, all right, let's just find a furnished rental and just live here for a while. So that's what we're doing, and it's awesome.
You're loving it.
Yeah, loving it. And I always saw this region of Australia as just a holiday destination, because that's just what you know it as. But I never considered it as a place to live. And now suddenly I'm pregnant and we're having a baby here, and we've found all these local communities, and it's actually just a gorgeous place to live. It's a laid back beach lifestyle. And after living in big cities, I mean, Melbourne, LA, and Mexico City, living in big cities my whole life, now being in something that's a little different, it's so nice. But it is still a big city, actually. It's not like I'm in a remote beach community, but it's just it's a perfect meet in the middle.
A different vibe. I'm with you. And Angel is just, I think, kind of a chill guy to begin with. I feel like he would really just thrive and flourish in a more relaxed kind of take the boy out of Mexico City, put him on the ocean. And so for those who are listening who don't know, you did drop a little hint. There might be a little Bambino on the way, which we will talk a little bit more about. But you, just before making this move to Australia, again, moving back to Australia, you and Angel tied the knot. And this was sort of, I think, an interesting, you guys had been, I mean, almost a decade, I think, in a relationship together. So talk to us a little bit about, taking the plunge.
Yeah, actually, it's our 10-year anniversary in 2 weeks from now. And we've always said, because everyone would always ask, why aren't you two married yet? And that was always something that we weren't rushing. We didn't feel like we needed. We're like, one day, but our families are sprawled all across the planet. My extended family's all in Ireland, actually. And then his is all in Mexico, plus everyone in Australia and in the United States. The idea of getting 4 countries together, woof, it was just always so overwhelming. So it was just kind of easy to be like, yeah, one day. And then the pandemic, we were in lockdown in LA, and in May, randomly this audition popped up. So I got this audition for a film in Australia, and this is May 2020, when the world is completely on pause. And I was like, what on earth am I auditioning for? There's no production going underway right now. But there was this film shooting in Australia. And so I auditioned for it and I sent it, and I thought, why would I get it as well? Because the borders are all closing and, I'm overseas. They'll just pick some actor who's already in Australia. Like, there's no way. But I thought, well, this is fun. And I thought I'd still just give it a crack, and sent it off. And then honestly didn't think I'd hear back. Sure enough, I ended up getting the role. And we realized that, oh my God, we have to fly to Australia next week, because we had to fit in 2 weeks of hotel quarantine before production started and all of that. So it was kind of like go, go, go. But because the borders were shut to citizens only and immediate family, we were like, we didn't want to risk Angel not getting the exemption to come into the country with me. So we just decided on the Wednesday, let's drive to Vegas and get married on the Friday. And then we're married. And it was the greatest way to get married. We just loved it. It was the best day, because we just hopped. There was no one else but us. There was nothing to overthink. We didn't have to worry about the flowers arriving on time or the cake or just anything. We didn't have to worry about any logistics other than us just getting out of bed in time and driving over to Vegas and having a road trip. And it was just us in the car. And we did a drive-through Vegas wedding, because then we didn't have to wear masks because we got to stay in the car, right? So we just got married through the window like we were ordering fries at McDonald's. But it was honestly the most beautiful 6-minute ceremony. And we just loved it, because there was nothing else around it other than the two of us and us making a commitment to each other. And I remember my very first trip to Vegas 10 years ago, and seeing all of the chapels. And I remember thinking, that's so tacky. I would never do anything like that. Oh my God. And now I'm such an advocate for it, because it was just beautiful. And there was just zero stress around it. And then we drove back to LA as well that night, because, all the hotels were closed at the time. Vegas was all shut down. And so we literally spent 8 hours of the day in the car together, just, chatting about our future. And it was just wonderful. So I'm so, and then when we told all our friends and family, like, that's how we're doing it, they're like, of course, that's how you're getting married. That just makes so much sense.
It's so crazy. I remember even my mom and other people asking me, like, did Lynn just get married in Las Vegas? Like, what happened? And I was like, when I explained your guys' situation with your families and being everywhere, and everyone was actually kind of like, wow, I guess that makes total sense. Like, this is something, but you guys could have done it, I think, a million ways, and it would have been beautiful and amazing, however you ended up doing it. I think, when two people really love each other, it's just, I think it's like a beautiful thing. And so you sort of touched on, which is, so, I mean, this is something you've been, I think, thinking about or pursuing in some way, since you were a little girl. And in the last few years, we've really seen not only Lynn, the WPT anchor, but Lynn, the actress. And it's so interesting, because I think too, there was this idea that, being this actress would be something that would make the most sense in Los Angeles. I think that's what everyone in the film industry thinks, no matter, what their role is. But it feels to me from the outside watching now that actually starting and building this career in Australia is like such a great fit, and they actually have like a really amazing film community going on there. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, this journey and how it's really brought you home.
Yeah, it actually blows my mind that because growing up, if you want to be an actor, it's like you got to go to LA, or if you want to be a director, if you want to do anything in film, you go to LA. And the idea of being in Australia and getting to pursue those opportunities is just, that's still such a foreign idea to me, but that's what's happening this year. And um it's been a whirlwind. So that film that I told you about, that I booked, that brought us home to Australia, it was a dream. Actually, the trailer just came out yesterday, so I'll post that soon, but it's called This Little Love of Mine. And it was just a beautiful escape into a romantic story. It's kind of like a rom-com. And because it was in June, July of 2020, it was the height of so much unknown with the pandemic. So we had to form this bubble, and we all stayed, like the cast and crew, we all stayed in this one resort, which is also where we were filming. And it was in Palm Cove, which is this gorgeous beach town of Australia. So we were just in paradise. We all got our COVID tests and then formed our bubble. And for a whole month, even more, I think it was 5 weeks, we all had our families there with us, and we basically all lived together and making this beautiful movie just completely in a bubble from the rest of the world and not looking at the news. And just, it was the best way to mentally just get through the 2020 and just escape the chaos for 5 weeks. And it was amazing. So that's coming out soon, and that will always be such a special film to me, just because of how it impacted our world last year, personally. And then that also then snowballed with the same production company. Right after that, we did a second film right after it called Kidnapped, which comes out in a couple of weeks here in Australia. And again, same thing. We just went out into the rainforest of Australia for a whole month, and we all lived together in a resort, filming at that same resort, and it was amazing. And so that was the first film was one of the first productions to come back, to go back into production in Australia, and really kind of led the way to show how it could be done. And so now, since then, there has been so much happening here in terms of film and TV production. I actually heard that in 2020, almost $2 billion worth of US productions had to get turned away because we just didn't have the capacity to accommodate so much. We don't have enough studios. We don't have enough crew. We don't there was just so much demand and so much happening. Like Tom Hanks and Baz Luhrmann just wrapped Elvis that they were filming here on the Gold Coast for ages. And it's just really exciting how much production's coming here. And so now new studios are popping up all over Australia. Old warehouses are getting turned into massive film studios. And this is cool. It's really cool. And now, because all of Australia's talent has come home, we've got directors and actors and makeup artists and everyone who otherwise just packed up and went to LA. Now suddenly they're all in Australia. And now we're all like, let's make it all happen here. So that's kind of what's happening. It's cool.
I mean, that's so amazing. I can even remember one of my camera guys when we were in Australia, Matthew, who wanted to be a cinematographer and just, trying to figure out for a lot of Australians too, even just trying to get a permit to work in the United States or to come and try to make it isn't even a realistic option. And so
Right.
for a lot of these people who are looking to do this or live this life, there wasn't really any options. And to think now, it's like, I hope they all have the last laugh. I hope it all takes off in Australia, and it's like just a gorgeous place. And I'm so happy to see you, being, living this kind of life that we live, where you have these really intense periods of working really hard, and then you have some time off, being able to fill some of those times off with something that you really love. And I wanted to ask you if you thought, because I think people misconstrue a lot of the time the idea that being a presenter is like being an actor, or vice versa, that the two roles are just interchangeable, and I think lots of actors even have tried to sort of make the move into this more like anchor type position, and it's not the same job. That being said, I do think learning and being good at either one would help the other one considerably.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how it's changed the way that you come into presenting and anchoring?
Yes, I love this question. Because the industry definitely separates the two. You're either an actor or a host, but I don't always agree with that. But you're right, though, that it can be hard for someone to do both, and there's a reason for that. And being a host, it's kind of a version of yourself. We have characters within us. We all have different personalities. The person that we are on a Thursday night watching Netflix on the couch is going to be very different to when we're in a business meeting and when we're at the poker table. So we have different versions of us. And so being a host is a particular version of ourselves, while it is still ourselves for sure. And that's what makes a good host too, is bringing authenticity. So it's not being a fake version of yourself that you've, formed, but it's just maybe a little exaggerated. I don't know what it is, but it's a particular type. And that's the same with acting. You're bringing yourself to the character that's on the page. Like when you're acting, you're reading a script and you're completely immersing yourself into this character's world, but you can only really bring what you know to it, kind of like or what research you do, but you're still bringing you to it. And that's what makes your version of that character yours. And then, if you play that same character, you're going to do it totally differently. So they are very similar. And studying acting, because I just started my classes. Like, I used to act as a child, and then I sort of let that career dream go. And then when I moved to LA with the World Poker Tour, it took me a few years to get the courage to start an acting class again. But when I did, it was just the best feeling. And so it was only in the last 5 years that I've been taking acting classes, and it has impacted my hosting massively, because you learn things as well in the acting space that help with hosting. Like, the number one thing is the importance of your thoughts at all moments. And I always give this tip to anyone who's making a presentation, who's hosting an Instagram live, whatever. You don't have to be a professional host, but these days we are hosting something in some way in our lives, or making a speech at a wedding, whatever it is. When you're learning a script of what you're saying, it's just as important to also learn the thoughts that you're going to have behind everything that you're saying in that script. Because if they're not matching, it doesn't come out authentically. It doesn't hit the way you think it's going to. Your tone is all different. Our thoughts come out in so many ways, which we also learn at the poker table, and acting also helps at the poker table. Like, we have all these micro expressions on our face, and that's why we all hear about poker face, but it goes beyond that too. It goes into tone of voice and the body language, and the easiest shortcut to master that is to have the right thoughts. And whether they're authentic or not, if you just think, as if you're thinking, oh my God, I'm terrified right now, please don't call when you're in a hand, but you're trying to look strong. You just, even if you're not feeling it, just have the thoughts of, oh yeah, just have confident thoughts if you want to look confident, because everything's all over our face. And that's sort of an easy shortcut when it comes to acting and hosting and playing poker and life in general.
That makes so much sense. And that, I think, more or less answers one of the questions I think you saw on Twitter, which was just, how do you manage to stay so positive? It's been a really tough year for a lot of people, but you just seem to be living your best life. Lynn's always living her best life. And I think a lot of that comes down to, though, right, learning to recognize your thoughts and to try to focus on the positive ones.
Absolutely. And the whole idea of positive thinking, it gets a bad rap sometimes too, like, oh, but it's naive or whatever. But oh my God, it's just controlling my brain has changed my life so dramatically, and learning the impact of that. It's just like going to the gym. You have to, if you want biceps, you've got to work on them. And then if you stop going, your biceps they fade away a little bit. And the brain works in the same way. It's a constant practice. And of course we have bad days, and some days it is impossible to find the good, but knowing that that's okay, and that it's just it's a wave, and that dark cloud can pass. And it's not about ignoring things going on. It's just about seeing the light in everything that you can. And just doing it in baby steps, it just becomes habitual, and it becomes easier and natural without actively then having to think about it. And And so with the pandemic, as shit as it has been for so many people in the world, and there's so many things that are now so different in our life, I don't choose to look at what's missing. I'm choosing to look at, okay, well, what has this given us? This has given us, you know, Angel and I are now in the same country for the first time in 10 years. We've never formally lived in the same country before. We've always been between Mexico and the United States and Australia. There's things like that where it's just, it's so just focusing on what has it given me more time with my family? Has it made me realize I need very little, like I don't need as much stuff as I needed. I don't need to be spending as much money going out all the time. I don't need to buy as many clothes. Like there's all these perks that have come from it too. And just trying to focus on that as, you know, and that's with everything. Same with, and same with poker. If you have a losing session, it's like, okay, well, what did I learn from it? Rather than focusing on what you lost, what did you gain? And just always trying to look at the positive side is so helpful. And it has changed my life.
And also your life is about to change even more dramatically because the pandemic has given you the gift of a child, which this is something obviously we've talked lots about, when and if this would ever happen amongst our girlfriends. I think, for women who, just like men, your mid 30s is more than likely when you're in sort of the prime of your working years. You've gone through your education, you've gotten some experience behind you. And by the time you're in your mid 30s, you're probably at the peak of your career and a lot of opportunities are coming to you. That being said, this is also the time when your ovaries are either going to like shrivel up into raisins or you're going to produce some spawn. So it is a difficult and interesting time to have children, but I think in this poker space, we are fortunate because there's, being in a less traditional environment, I think gives us a little bit of freedom and a lot of space. And also I think you having a husband who doesn't have like a traditional 9 to 5 is going to make things, I think he will be very deeply invested in this little Bambino's life, which is so nice. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, deciding. You guys got married soon after you decided to have a kid, making that decision. Did you have doubts, questions, etc.? And then now, where you are, not too far away from it, what are you thinking? Are you just like super crazy excited? Are you nervous?
I'm 100% just excited. And so is Angel. It's just been the most beautiful time of our relationship, and we really are in it together, which is so, it's so important, like for a couple when during this time, like I just feel so supported by him. He comes to every appointment, and I know that we're very lucky in that regard because he works from home and plays poker, so not everyone can go, but just wherever he can, he's just there. He's on this journey physically as much as possible as he can, which is just beautiful, and then puts me at ease. So I think that's also why I'm feeling so much joy in this process, and honestly, I'm not feeling any fear yet, but who knows? I'm open to it. Who knows if that changes? I'm not naive to it, but it's just, I always knew I had a feeling that I would love pregnancy, and it's still blown me away. It makes me look at my body differently and life differently. And I'm just loving it. But what you described is so true for women in their 30s. Like when you're working for like the larger part of your year towards your career, or your life towards your career, and you're now in your 30s and you have this clock ticking over you. It's so true. The pressure of the clock, but wanting to do it all. And if you just, it's so overwhelming. Like, well, hang on, if I actively make this choice to change something, am I going to undo everything I've just worked on for the last 20 years? That all plays in your mind. It's really overwhelming. But I've been so lucky, like with the WPT, the most supportive company that one could work for. And it's all just fallen into place. Really, I'm just so grateful how much it has fallen into place, because I get to be home in Australia now to have my child, and I'm not like I'm not missing traveling to events because we're actually like there's an event down the road. I happen to be here for the Star Gold Coast. So it's actually just worked out well. And yeah, I don't know. It just balancing it up can all be overwhelming. But I think at the end of the day, we just have to keep trusting that everything works out. The same way that like even just like this human is growing in my body and I actually have no active part in it whatsoever. Otherwise, other than just not hurting myself and eating some good food, taking my vitamins, other than that, there's nothing that I can do to like, this is all happening on its own. And why does that change? Like, it's so funny, like labor and everything, like it's all nature just does it all on its own. And I remember reading a quote or something years ago, and it's like, why do humans once the baby is in the world now that we're like, all right, thanks Mother Nature, I'll take it from here. And what we think is we can just figure everything out and have solutions to everything and just plan and no, just keep trusting that it's okay. Things will figure, like, yes, of course, have a plan and think ahead and do as much as you can, but don't freak out if it's not all under control, because that's just not how life works. And as much control as we think we have, we'll get shown otherwise.
And having kids is the biggest exercise in letting go of control I think anyone could ever have. It's the most, you just realize you're not the boss of anything and you're just like along for the ride. And I'm so happy that you're having a baby, not just because we get to sort of share this journey together, but because I have always known that you were like made to be a mom, and that we do live in this world where it is possible. The idea of having it all is whatever it is, I don't know, but can you have a career and have a child? Absolutely. And
yeah,
I am so excited for you guys. And, you know, speaking of your career and, you know, all of the things, you've worked for the World Poker Tour for a long time. Really, I think your face is completely synonymous with the World Poker Tour at this point. And there was a shift, but I have to imagine this was kind of like an upper level shift maybe a couple months ago. That didn't really affect you or your crew of people for the most part, right?
No, you mean the sale of the company? Yeah, there was a huge sale. And no, I mean, if anything, it should provide more opportunity and who knows, but no, that hasn't changed anything at all. It's just actually just even more exciting. It's actually been mind-blowing how we've been able to, the buzzword that everyone uses for 2020 is pivot. But we've just, obviously the World Poker Tour has always been a live tour. That's what we've been for 18 years in the TV show. And we had never gone into the online space really, other than Club WPT, but we've never given away the trophy and the Champions Cup in an online event. And now we've seen the company grow in such a way and explore an area of the industry that we hadn't really had the chance to, because we've been so busy. I mean, we had like 65 live events, I think, in 2019. So now this has given us an opportunity to like really refine Club WPT, which is the product we already had, and like that is expanding and booming. And then now, and we've had events on Party Poker, and we've got one coming up next week on 888 or next month. Like, I mean, there was a $50 million guarantee series on Party Poker that just blew out of the water. So now it's all just growing, and it's all because we've been able to do so much online and also still produce TV shows from our online presence as well. It's just amazing to be able to test out new things. And that's kind of what the WPT's always wanted to do as well, is just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And so we've been able to throw some new things at the wall, and it's really stuck.
It's crazy. And I think we're all fortunate to be in this industry in general. I think it was very possible to pivot, as you say, in ways that maybe other industries it was more difficult. But it's so funny because I think you and I both just have lived in this life where you just don't really have time to do like a lot of things, but especially content that you have ideas for or things that are just going to take time. We just really didn't have time to do a lot of the things, I think. And so I've been really actually impressed by, and from a content perspective, and it makes sense that they're so many people who are looking for productions and film and television and all this stuff now. Like we're all at home desperately looking for content. And so what a cool time to create some kind of more unusual and off the wall content. That being said, the WPT is actually going to play out some of these live final tables, which they've been sitting around for, you know, a year, some of them, or close to a year. And that's actually what made me think, well, okay, I think about you all the time. Let's get real, you guys. But I have an interview scheduled with Chance Corneth, and he was saying, you know, okay, we're finally playing this out. I hadn't even heard that this was like Monday or Tuesday. I hadn't heard the WPT was going to play out these final tables. But what does this mean for you guys? What is the normal process? They shoot all of this stuff. Are they still using that esports arena? Or I don't even know what's happened in the course of the last year to these final tables.
So these ones are actually being shot at the PokerGo studio. And because we're not going to have any audience or anything like that, obviously, given COVID. So then the PokerGo studio has it all, the setup all ready to go. It's such a great space to work from to make a TV show. They've got an awesome setup. So yeah, that's where it's going to be. And it actually backs off of, so we've got the Gardens final table coming up with Chance. That's in March. And it's actually backing onto, so we have a WPT Venetian playing down to the final table the day before we film that. So we're going to have back-to-back TV shows filming, or back-to-back champions. Yeah. What is it? March 9th and March 10th in Vegas. So that'll be awesome to finally get those final tables going. And then we've got another 2 final tables. So there was 3 total that were put on hold. And the other 2 are playing out in May. So there's just been a lot of logistics around all of that, getting them all together, because we've got people flying in, and
Of course. And we talked a lot about even the sort of initial idea of having a lot of these final tables later, this like esports arena idea. And I personally think it's a really interesting concept anyways. I like the idea of like building stories. I like the idea of giving people the opportunity to spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to do and what's going on. I think it increases the drama. But yeah, I'm excited to see live poker happening. And we were talking a little bit before the show. I didn't even realize the WPT is like having events that are dominating last month, or like what's happening. So the WPT is now sort of back in the mode of hosting some live events.
Yeah. So we first started to have some live events in Asia, and they went really well. We've got one coming up in Australia in May. But then we also had our second largest WPT main event in Florida at the Seminole Hard Rock last month. It was amazing to see. Like clearly everyone was just bursting to get back at the tables. And so the turnout was just amazing. And, you know, the Hard Rock have done everything they can to keep it as safe and clean as possible, like with all of the shields and there's sanitizer everywhere, and the whole thing was a major success. In fact, it was such a success. I just love the story that came out of it, because the champion, Ilyas Muradi, his name is, his story is, there's a whole article on WPT.com if you haven't heard about it, but he was detained in by ICE for I think like a couple of years or a year and a half. He moved from Afghanistan to the United States when he was 12 years old. He's lived in the United States his whole life, as long as he remembers. And then he was detained and he was kept in solitary confinement for a while. And it was all, they wanted to deport him for some outdated paperwork. And it's just horrendous, like to treat someone like that and put them in solitary confinement, like no human deserves anything like that. It's just horrible. And then they just released him because and he still lives in the United States. Like they couldn't deport him because he's basically American. And so he had gone through this horrific time of his journey, and then happened to, and I think he was released into, I won't say, it was recently, like 2019, I think. And then anyway, he was in Florida, and he plays poker, but he didn't intend on playing the WPT main event. He was actually supposed to fly home. He happened to miss his flight, decided to enter a satellite, just like, oh, stuff it, here we are, I'll just play a satellite, might as well. Wins the satellite to the main event, and then ends up winning the main event. And it second largest main event we've ever had. Like, it's just such an amazing story. I think he won like $800,000. I just love this story so much. And I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from him. And now he'll get to play in the Tournament of Champions because that's part of the prize. So we're going to see him a lot more. And I just think that's a beautiful story.
I mean, being in the poker media, we are pretty consistently looking for a good story and hoping desperately that the good story is the person that wins. And like 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be that person. But also, I mean, that's horrific. And it looks like that guy was due for some run good. Like it was time for him to hit something. And again, it goes back to what you were saying about just, you know, trusting in some things instead of freaking out that your flight, you know, you missed your flight or whatever. Like, why not just test your luck and jump into a satellite to a gigantic tournament? So actually,
in whatever.
I wanted to talk to you though too about the tournament coming up in May. I feel like I saw on someone else's social media that they were like, "Ooh, there's going to be like a special guest at this big tournament in Australia coming," which I was like, "Oh, I hope it's Lynn. I bet it's Lynn." But is poker happening again in Australia legitimately? I mean, are these casinos and poker rooms running on the regular, or is this just for this event?
No, it's actually, I feel like we're on another planet here. Like, because the borders have been shut and we've contained the virus and there just is no virus in Australia, we've been able to move about quite freely. But it's been a slow and steady step by step. And it's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And in terms of gathering groups. And so concerts are back now and we can all gather with big events. And so the poker tables at the Star, they opened up cash games. I think it was about 2 months ago, 7-handed. We were able to, because they were able to have their other tables open 4-handed. So it wasn't till the restrictions lifted to 7 that they opened poker. And that's all been going really well. It felt so good. I went down for the opening night for the first cash game. And it was so fun to take a seat at that table. Like everyone, they were opening a brand new table and all 7 of us players were just like beaming with excitement. And we're all just like, hi. So excited to see each other and to play cards. And the dealer, we're all just joking around. Like the dealer's like, bear with me. I'll probably, I need some help remembering how to do this. And so it was just so nice to unanimously come back together like that. And so cash games have been running for a couple months there now, and tournaments are just starting back up again. And so, we'll have an event there soon. It hasn't been formally announced, so I guess I can't say, I don't know what I can say, but we will have an event. It was supposed to happen last year, but we went to the Star for the first time in 2019, and the turnout was so positive. Like we just had players lined up out the door because we didn't have too much of a presence in Australia before that. Our show doesn't air here, or it hasn't for a while, and it was our first WPT event in Australia. So we didn't know like what would will everyone travel for it? And hell yes, every poker player in Australia came up to the Gold Coast for it. So we will do that again. But actually, just last weekend, we do have the WPT League, which is our pub poker league. So it's all self-dealing, low stakes, playing in a pub, really like laid back. The guy who runs it here in Australia has done such an amazing job at growing it. And there's this thing called the Quarterly Poker Championship, which he does every 3 months. And we just had it last week. And the turnout, the whole series had a $550,000 guarantee. And the series, which was a 5-day series, ended up having $1.2 million of prize money come through it. This is pub poker. There were 10 dealers available for like final tables and the high roller events. But in terms of the main event and all the side events, we're all dealing our own cards. Like it was amazing to see how many players turned out for this. And we just had this huge convention center space. They just put in a bunch of trestle tables, and it was so fun. And again, it was that same vibe of everyone just being so stoked to be back at a poker table. So yeah, poker is booming here in Australia. There's so much demand, and it's back.
So is there any movement, and this may or may not be something that you're super familiar with, or obviously it doesn't necessarily have to be in your wheelhouse, but is there any movement in terms of getting the major brands back online in Australia?
Yeah, that I don't know, actually. I haven't, it's a good question, but There are poker players, people in the industry trying to drive the change there, but I don't know what the status is right now. At the moment, we're sitting pretty much exactly the same as the United States in terms of just praying for the best.
Jada, we'll take what we can get at this point. Like we'll take pub poker, we'll take like, whatever we can get. Well, my baby just came home. I'm not sure if you can hear her. I can, and I've got to put her down and do all the things which you're just getting ready for. I can't wait. And we may or may not, everyone, just mark your calendars, have a pretty broad reunion at some point in the next few months before we pop these babes out.
Yes, that would be amazing. I just cannot believe Sarah and I are 2 weeks apart in our pregnancy. Like, what are the odds of that? Also, we have the same birthday. We're both born on November 3rd, and we're going to have imagine if we have our child on the same day. That's
the weirdest thing is that's like totally within reason. Like would not be surprising at all. And yeah, it's pretty bizarre. And so, and also it's about that, that trusting and just knowing, because I never saw myself in this space or this industry. I don't think you did either to begin with. And then when you find these people and you just realize that this was like totally meant to happen, like a million years ago, we probably decided we were going to do this. And here we are. It's one of those things that just makes me be like, yep, okay. I know I'm not the boss of it, and I'm just like enjoying the ride. Yeah. And I'm so happy to see you. And when we hang this up really quick, you just have to wait, because I want you to say hi to Vera.
Oh, yes, please.
All right. Well, tell everyone where they can find you. I know you guys probably all already follow Lynn Gilmartin. Like, don't pretend like you don't. But if you don't, where can they find you so they can follow all of your exploits and your coming journey?
I've spent most of my time on Instagram. So at Lynn Gilmartin on Instagram is probably the best place.
She keeps it pretty updated. It was a little sparse there for a minute. I was a little disappointed. I need to keep my.
That was first trimester. I slept 3.5 months away. So I went so quiet on social media.
I was struggling, but I'm glad to see you back. And I'm super looking forward to seeing this new trailer. In fact, it's interesting because the Kidnapped trailer clearly came out before this romantic movie trailer. There must have been a lot of editing going on. I don't know, but I'm super excited to see it. And we will, of course, be just waiting in anticipation and trying to, I don't know if we have to find these things illegally on the internet or what we have to do, but we need to watch all of your movies.
Well, no, they will come to the States. I just can't tell you on what platform yet, but it will soon.
Okay, good, because I need them. All right, cool. Well, you guys find her at Lynn Gilmartin, and yeah, on to the next.
Thanks so much.
Well, while Chad was over in the Sin City trying to capture all of the money so he could officially leave PokerNews forever, there was a lot of action happening back in the Midwest where Chad left behind. The Michigan Coop, which everyone knows is probably my new favorite thing that's ever happened in poker. The MI Coop. Chad, what's been going down? How's that been being received?
Well, let me say real quick, when I was in Vegas playing this WPT, there was a banner of Lynn Gilmartin right above my table on day 2. She was staring down at me. It gave me the opportunity to reflect about our time together at PokerNews back in the day before she moved over to WPT. Real quick fun story with Lynn. Just this encapsulates Lynn to me. Is one day I went into the office during the WSOP PokerNews office, and I was looking for a snack. I said, "Does anybody have a snack?" And Lynn is always gracious, and she always has something. And she's like, "Yeah, I've got a snack for you." And she pulled it out, and it was like, "No, Lynn, like I'm looking for like a Snickers bar or some sort of candy." And this was like whole grain, not like a whole grain bar, like it was actual like grain that I would feed to cattle here. And so, yeah, Lynn has always been a very, very clean and healthy eater. Me in the Midwest, not so much, but I always remember that one about
grain
Lynn.
That I would feed to cattle, because that's something that you're doing also on the regular.
But yeah, back in the Midwest, the MICOOP turned out to be a tremendous success, and it really was. It was bigger than anybody expected. It was a 60 event series held on PokerStars Michigan, which just launched earlier this year. Now, through those 60 events, they had guaranteed about 1.4 million. It blew it away. More than 2.2 million in prize money was awarded. over 28,000, nearly 29,000 combined entrants across all those events. We've seen a couple players win 2 titles. And then there was the main event, which was a $300 buy-in tournament. It ended up getting 1,284 entries, and that one was won by screen name. I'm trying to find the real name, but right now we got the screen name SMFTT for $56,000. Now, this is a new market. All these people signed up with new screen names, so we're still learning some of these players. We were heavily involved in the Michigan poker community and their Facebook and social media groups, so we did get a good list of players who are really competing and grinding online there. But I'm really excited to expand upon that, because if this inaugural MICOOP was any indication, Michigan has a very strong poker scene, very strong online poker scene, and I think there's going to be some big things to come, especially if at the end of this month, when they're supposed to, they're able to join those interstate compacts. And so we are close to maybe seeing Michigan players, New Jersey players, Nevada players, and let's hope Pennsylvania players all in the mix. We can toss Delaware in there as well, and get this bigger player pool, and then hopefully those dominoes keep falling. And yeah, it's still a ways away, but I think year by year over the next 5 years, we can really see online poker in the United States start to kind of fill out its potential, if you will.
Completely agree. And I think all the operators have to be looking at PokerStars in Michigan and their success, and be pretty thrilled with it, knowing that their future plans do include merging all of these player pools in these states, like Chad mentioned.
America. It's coming, you guys.
Yep.
Bringing it back here to America. And I'd love to stay and hang out with you guys. Like, I want to just keep doing this all day, but I've got a mask off party to attend to. So
in Texas, yeah.
Get out of here and go take my mask off with a bunch of other people and go crazy. Hit it pretty hard. Anything else? What do you guys have going on this week? Jeff, I'm sure you're like out in the game shaking hands and kissing babies for GG or for
I'm gonna go to Cabo actually tomorrow, and maybe play some GG on Sunday for the first time. So excited about that.
Are you going to be back for the podcast next week?
Oh yeah. I always make sure I'm back at home, fully focused on the PokerNews podcast, while taking in all the poker content, just like you do, Sarah.
Every week. Chad, are you going to be like focused on what's going on at PokerNews, or are you out there trying to win?
I mean, yeah, maybe that. Maybe find another 5K, 10K,
there we go.
25K to fire off. No, it's definitely back on the work grind for me until a few weeks from now. The MSPT is going to be in Iowa at Riverside Casino, $1,100 main event. We will be doing updates from that, but I'm actually going to go fire that one as well. See if I can't finally get this tournament score I've been craving.
It's like, do we work for the same company? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what kind of bonus did you get that I didn't get?
It's not the bonus that I got. It's just you had a baby, Sarah, and that takes up your time and a lot of money, I'm sure. And I'm just that eligible bachelor with, that can fire a few bullets here and there.
My life choices, I swear. I remember when I lived in Palm Springs, they had a bar. It was called Dinks, dual income, no kids. There's very, very large gay community there. And I was like, wow, I never considered that the like income is a factor, but it does make it like quite an appealing lifestyle in some ways if you just want to go spend your money. So Chad, not that I'm saying that for you, like you can just have the one income, that's fine, it's up to you, but not me over here. I'm just here living this traditional monogamous life, trying to spend all my money on all the babies that I possibly can. Love you guys, of course. It's been great catching up, and we'll catch you on the flip. Oh, also, just so everyone knows, we're going to have Chance on next week, but I did also catch up with Veronica Brill last week, and it's a long, awesome interview. She like totally blew my mind, and I've actually thought about some of the things we talked about many times in the last couple weeks, so you guys can look forward to that next week or maybe the week after. We'll see. Catch you on the flip side. Deuces.
Run It Once is a brand new online poker site founded by poker superstar Phil Galfond, who has the player's experience at heart. Run It Once plans to make online poker fun and less predatory while providing ample rewards and innovative features at the same time. All new Run It Once players who download the software via PokerNews are entitled to a 100% deposit bonus worth up to $6,000 100 euros. What makes this welcome bonus unique is that you can make as many deposits as you like for that first 30 days after your first deposit. This makes it perfect for those players who do not want to or cannot deposit 600 in one chunk. Be sure to check it out at once.run/pnpod. That's once.run/pnpod.